An alien princess entered in my room by mistake and then everything changed. The air recycler in Theo Maddox's room wheezes like a dying accordion. It was a mechanical groan that had come to mark the start of his evenings, a sound that meant everything was quiet, the shift was over, and nobody needed him to fix a conduit or plug a hole in a whining power core for at least 8 blessed hours. He stretched out on his bunk, one boot still dangling halfway off his foot, the other lost somewhere under a pile of semi-clean uniforms that were slowly achieving sentience. He just closed his eyes, trying to sink into the gentle embrace of unconsciousness, or at least the comforting hum of the station's artificial gravity, when the door chime buzzed twice, software hesitant, like a knock from someone who wasn't quite sure if doors on human space stations responded to knocking at all. He ignored it. Probably Jenkins. Jenkins always wanted something at the worst possible time, extra ration bars, someone to help calibrate his karaoke mic. Last week it had been a 10-minute debate about whether the replicator had sabotaged his meatloaf. Theo didn't have the energy. The chime came again. He sighed, launched a boot at the wall, missed, and slouched toward the door. It hissed open with a cheerful chirp, and then everything went strange. She slipped inside like she was made of liquid shadow, a figure swathed in a shimmering wrap that caught the dim station light and refracted it into 1,000 tiny stars. Her eyes, wide and luminous, scanned the room in frantic bursts. Long silver blonde hair brushed her back, and those ears, those unmistakable, impossible ears, pointed skyward like elegant satellite dishes. Her first word was not, as he would later joke, "Take me to your leader." It was something sharp and melodic, layered with tones the translator lagged behind trying to catch up with. Then she froze, her eyes landed on Theo standing in rumpled fatigues with one sock on and a very confused frown plastered across his face. This is not the what?" he asked, blinking. "This is not the corridor I intended." He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again, mostly to say something snappy, but all that came out was a helpless, "Right." She blinked furiously. "This is awkward. I appear to have stumbled into your pod room." "Yes, that. I shall leave immediately." She turned, tugging her wrap tighter, bumping into the wall panel beside the door instead of the actual door. Theo scratched his head. "You okay there?" She inhaled slowly. "I am completely, flawlessly in control of this situation." "Sure, you're doing great." He gestured vaguely at the space around them. "Do you always enter strangers' rooms to assert control over your personal disasters?" She finally found the door panel but hesitated, her fingers hovered. She glanced back at him, the corner of her mouth twitching. "They are looking for me," she said quietly. "I needed to disappear. I thought this was a maintenance hatch." "Your signage is very artistic." He chuckled despite himself. "You're hiding from station security." "I'm hiding from an entire species worth of expectations and political entanglements." She looked around again. "Also, possibly my grandmother." "Oh," he said. "So not Jenkins from engineering?" "No, I am not Jenkins." She took a deep breath, then sat down very carefully on the edge of his bunk, like a diplomat pretending a plank of wood was a throne. "Would you mind if I stayed here for a few minutes?" Theo opened his mouth again, thought about all the regulations he'd signed, the thick red line in the crew handbook labeled "Aliens, do not shelter royalty in your room," and shrugged. "You don't look dangerous," he said. "That is a terrible metric," she replied with a straight face. He chuckled again. "Well, it's all I've got." She looked down at her hands, which were clasped in her lap with a kind of rigid grace. "I won't disturb you. I just need to collect myself." He went back to the chair, scooped up a datapad, and pretended to read something while watching her from the corner of his eye. After a minute, she tilted her head. "What is that?" "Report logs." "Boring stuff." "No, that thing you're sitting on." "This." He patted the chair. "Chair. Fascinating." She leaned forward. "So minimalistic and aggressively square. You've never seen a chair. We use hover thrones." "Sounds exhausting." "It's mostly floating and speeches. Yours looks like it bites. Only when it's bored. She smirked. I like it. He blinked. There was something odd about the way she said it, not flirtatious exactly, more like relieved. Silence settled between them, not awkward, just unfamiliar, like two strangers in the same train car both aware that they are pretending not to eavesdrop on each other's silence. So, he said, trying not to sound too curious, are you going to tell me your name, or should I keep calling you not Jenkins? She tilted her head again. O'Larry. That's nice. I'm Theo. Your name sounds like a sneeze. He stared at her. She gave him the faintest smile. I mean that as a compliment. Well, Princess O'Larry not Jenkins, what exactly are you running from? She didn't answer right away. Her fingers toyed with the edge of her wrap, a silvery fabric that shimmered faintly with embedded stardust, literal stardust, if he had to guess. The expensive kind. Marriage, she said finally. Politics. A planet that wants me to be someone I'm not. So I did what any rational future monarch would do, snuck onto a military station and crawled into a maintenance quarter. Incorrectly crawled into a soldier's sleeping quarters. Yes, well, he said. At least you're committed. I am very committed, she said dryly. Just not to the person I was supposed to marry. He leaned back. You always this open with strangers? No, but your room smells like toasted cheese and machine oil. It reminds me of my brother's hover bike garage. Theo looked around. I'm not sure how to feel about that. She exhaled, the tight line of her shoulders relaxing a fraction. I think I'll stay a little longer. That a good idea? Absolutely not. Cool. He tossed her a ration bar. She caught it with alarming reflexes. Dinner. She peeled the wrapper, sniffed it, frowned, then took a cautious bite. Her face twisted in horror. Is this punishment? He grinned. Welcome to human hospitality. She chewed reluctantly. I regret everything. They sat there for a while, him half reading his datapad, her nibbling at the bar like it was an act of diplomatic martyrdom. Outside, the station rotated slowly, orbiting its quiet, indifferent star. Inside, two people from galaxies apart sat together in a room too small for proper introductions. Theo didn't know what was coming. Neither did she. But for that moment, it didn't matter. The first thing Theo noticed the next morning was that his datapad was missing. The second thing he noticed was that someone had rearranged his entire gear shelf by color, frequency modulation, and, he was fairly certain, how the items made them feel emotionally. He sat up with a groan, one hand rubbing the sleep from his eyes, the other padding around the floor for the errant datapad. A faint hum echoed through the room, followed by an unmistakable voice chanting something with dramatic flair. Good morning, O engine of linear thought and obsolete programming, said Ari. Theo froze. Are you praying to my coffee machine? I am negotiating, she replied without looking up, her back to him as she crouched in front of the ancient, semi-functional drink dispenser that had served him bitter brown sludge for 3 years straight. She stood triumphantly, holding up a steaming mug, though the steam was suspiciously blue. I made it sing to me. That seemed important for the ritual. He took the mug cautiously, sniffed it, then frowned. This isn't coffee. It is now. It smells like boiled moonberries and burnt hope. I call it Ambassador's Despair. Drink it. It improves with confusion. Theo took the smallest sip in recorded history, then nodded slowly. Okay, I'm awake. Partially paralyzed. Good job. O'Larry beamed. She was wearing one of his spare station jumpsuits, a size too big, sleeves rolled, the name patch hilariously misspelled as mad, and her long ears twitched every time she turned her head, as if recalibrating to the room's acoustics. She moved like someone trying not to break things, but with no real understanding of what things could or could not break. He gestured toward the shelf. Why did you put my thermal detonator next to the protein powder? They are both dangerous when misused, she said cheerfully. Fair. He glanced toward the door. So, the station, you think anyone noticed the royal runaway hiding in my room? She raised one delicate eyebrow. I am a master of stealth and subtlety. As if on cue, the wall panel buzzed. Theo swore and lunged for his uniform. Get in the closet. What is a closet? The thing with doors full of regrets and jackets. Olari swirled her cloak like a magician and vanished into the closet with all the grace of a cosmic swan trying to fit into a shoe box. Theo slapped the panel, and the door whooshed open to reveal Lieutenant RY. RY was all sharp angles and suspicion, a man whose favorite hobby seemed to be finding things that didn't belong and then writing reports about them in exhausting detail. Maddox, he said. We're doing random room checks. Random. Very. Theo stepped aside as RY entered, eyes scanning the room with military precision. RY paused in front of the coffee machine. Is that steam blue? It's a new blend. Experimental. From what? Theo shrugged. Diplomatic leftovers. RY's nose wrinkled, but he said nothing. Then came the worst sound in the galaxy, a sneeze. High-pitched, muffled, definitely not human. Theo laughed. That's the machine. Does that sometimes? RY stared at the closet. It sneezes. Unstable coolant pressure. You know how it is. RY narrowed his eyes and took a step toward the closet. Theo panicked. Sir, he said loudly, would you like a cup of ambassador's despair? RY froze. I've read your reports. That's a war crime. Theo smiled. Exactly. One taste and you'll see the universe sideways. RY looked at him like he might be contagious. This inspection is concluded, he said stiffly and turned on his heel. As the door hissed shut, the closet door creaked open, and Olari tumbled out, cloak tangled in a wire hanger, face flushed from containment. He smells like boiled vinegar, she said. That's how you know he's trustworthy. She collapsed onto the bunk, arms spread. This is fun. I haven't had this much fun since I rigged my cousin's hovercraft to only turn left. He sat beside her. So what now? You going to stay in here forever? Eventually, someone's going to figure it out. You're a little too majestic to be my cousin from the mining colonies. She sat up, eyes sharp now, mouth set in something between fear and stubbornness. I can't go back. I just can't. They want me to marry a man whose greatest accomplishment is breeding carnivorous orchids. Sounds romantic. They eat fingers. Less romantic. She stood and paced, arms crossed. Do you know what it's like to be seen as a symbol? To be a treaty in a dress. He watched her, something tight in his chest. I'm a soldier, he said. My name gets lost in duty rosters. So yeah, I think I get it. She paused, looked at him. I like you, Theo Maddox. You're extremely average. I strive for it. You fail spectacularly. There was a beat of silence, then they both laughed. It was the kind of laugh that felt stolen from a better world. Afterwards, she flopped back onto the bed. I will stay here, just for a while, until I figure out what to do. If that's okay. He looked around at his tiny room, the hissing pipes, the flickering light, the weird blue coffee still steaming. Yeah, he said. Why not? Make yourself uncomfortable. She smiled at that, long ears twitching. Already there. And just like that, the room shifted. Not physically, the dimensions stayed the same, the gravity hummed predictably, the recycler still wheezed, but something about the air felt different. Less stale. Less lonely. He didn't know how long it would last, but for now, the galactic princess with the impossible ears and sharp tongue had claimed his room as her new hideout, and strangely, that felt kind of right. Theo had always assumed that royal aliens were quiet, mysterious types who sat cross-legged on starlit balconies, pondering the universe and sipping tea brewed from petals that only bloomed during solar flares. He hadn't expected one to beat his high score on Orbital Crash 5, Titan Drift before breakfast. Olari didn't even try to hide her pride. She twirled the old console controller between her fingers like it was a scepter of cosmic victory, then tossed him a smug glance over her shoulder. Your reflexes are sluggish. Do humans not train for combat with holographic spaceships and implausible physics? Theo sipped the less lethal version of Ambassador's Despair, narrowed his eyes, and muttered, "We train with disappointment and processed cheese." Builds character. She turned back to the screen where her score blinked in garish neon, Princessor, 77,127,820. His name, Theodope, was a distant second. The console buzzed with a small victory jingle, which Olari celebrated by throwing both arms in the air and shouting a phrase in her language that the translator politely declined to interpret. "You're not even trying to keep a low profile, are you?" She grinned without apology. "I am adapting to the local customs. Also, your game controller smells like pickles. That's part of the immersion." Their morning ritual had evolved quickly: coffee-shaped liquids, snark-laced small talk, and an ongoing competition to see who could rearrange Theo's stuff into the most absurd configurations without triggering a containment breach. Yesterday she'd built a miniature throne from energy packs and declared herself the temporary sovereign of Section 14B, which he'd countered by dubbing himself the supreme overlord of the sock drawer. But today, the lightness hung with a little more weight. There was something in her eyes as she handed him back the controller, a flicker of that same hesitant tightness he'd seen when she first appeared in his doorway. He didn't press. He knew better by now. Olari only shared what she wanted to, and usually only after she'd distracted you with insults and philosophical questions about the morality of cheese-flavored oxygen supplements. She stretched out on his bunk, ears brushing the pillow, and stared at the ceiling like it was broadcasting secrets. "I had a dream," she said after a pause. "I was floating. Not falling, not flying, just suspended. The stars were upside down." "The stars, that's normal," he replied. "Happens when the gravity stabilizers hiccup mid-cycle." "It wasn't the stabilizers. It felt like I was being pulled backward through my own memories." He turned to face her, elbows resting on his knees. "You homesick?" She snorted. "I'm homesick in that I am sick of my home." "Fair." She hesitated, then added quietly, "But I miss my brother. And my cat Snake. And the smell of fusion bread cooling in the night ovens." "That all sounds made up." "It probably is, but it's mine." Theo gave her a small smile. "Tell me about your brother." She blinked, clearly not expecting the question, then shrugged. "Annoying. Brilliant. Smells like engine coolant and bad ideas. Once tried to override a planetary weather grid just to make it snow on his birthday. Did it work?" "Oh yes. It snowed on the entire continent for 2 weeks. Impressive. Psychotic. Kind of adorable." She laughed, an unguarded, light-bursting sound that made him forget for a second that she was technically interstellar royalty. He liked when she laughed like that. It made the room feel less like a hiding place and more like something else, something that might matter. The chime on the door interrupted his thoughts. Both of them froze. She scrambled upright. He palmed the panel, muting it. "Maintenance crew. It's Tuesday. The ones who replaced your air filter with a scented one last time. They said lavender is calming. It smelled like regret and laundry detergent. Better than the gym locker aroma we had before." She darted for the closet. He stopped her. "Wait. Not this time." Her ears twitched. "Theo, trust me." He walked to the wall, pulled open the panel behind his gear shelf, and revealed a crawl space barely large enough for someone shaped like Olari to squeeze through. "You've had this the whole time," she hissed. "I was saving it in case of extreme emergencies. Or surprise visits from my commanding officer. Or Tuesdays." She slipped into the space with practiced agility, adjusting her wrap so it didn't get caught on a wire coil. "If I die in there," she muttered, "tell the universe I was too pretty for this world. You'll be fine. Just don't touch the orange pipe." "Why? What does it do?" "No one knows." She vanished into the darkness just as the door opened with a cheerful chime. Theo turned, grinning. Hey, Dave. Dave, the maintenance tech, was already elbow deep in the coffee unit. It smells weird in here. Theo gave a helpless shrug. Everything does. It's in the air systems. Dave poked at the machine. You know this thing was discontinued after the Oolong incident. Adds charm. The inspection lasted 10 grueling minutes, during which Theo pretended to be fascinated by his own fingernails while listening for any suspicious thuds from the crawl space. Eventually, Dave gave the all clear and lumbered out, muttering about caffeine-induced hallucinations and filing another report. The moment the door shut, Theo darted back to the panel and popped it open. Olari slithered out, looking victorious and mildly dusty. I found 3 dead spiders, a packet of expired pudding, and a singing circuit that insulted my ears. Yes, home sweet home. She swatted his arm, but her grin had returned. I could get used to this, she said softly. Hiding. Laughing. Being someone who isn't constantly paraded around like a cosmic prize. Well, he said, you are pretty bad at being paraded. Thank you. They sat in silence again, not heavy but thoughtful. She leaned her head against his shoulder, and for once neither of them made a joke about it. Outside, the stars kept spinning. Inside, the room grew just a little more like the kind of place you could belong to. Theo didn't know how long she'd stay, but for now she was here, and that was enough. Theo had never heard the phrase, royal distress squeak, before Olari tripped over his neural sock warmer and collapsed into a pile of thermal gear, flailing like a startled Mars rabbit. The sock warmer let out a tired beep as it died heroically beneath her elbow. I was aiming for Grace, she announced from the floor, tangled in one of his 0G hoodies. Did it look like Grace? You look like a meteor hitting a laundry asteroid. Excellent. That was plan B. She disentangled herself with exaggerated dignity, ears twitching in slow frustration. This morning she was determined to help him recalibrate the atmospheric regulators, or at least that's what she claimed. Mostly she was distracting him by singing the ballad of Thrax in the Moist, which by his understanding was either a tragic love song or an extremely enthusiastic baking tutorial. I don't think this is regulation maintenance protocol, Theo muttered as he tried to reach a corroded flux node buried beneath a panel labeled, Do Not Touch. Then why is it labeled so invitingly? Olari asked, now balancing a wrench on one finger while sitting cross-legged on the bunk. Your people are very bad at hiding things. Yeah, tell that to our cafeteria's chicken substitute. We still don't know what that is. She gave him a mock gasp. Are you telling me humans eat unidentified protein matter willingly? You guys literally inhale food cubes made from planetary moss. Those cubes are a delicacy. They squeak when you bite them. That's how you know they are fresh. The panel sparked, and Theo yanked his hand back with a hiss. Great, I think I just got insulted by the regulator. Olari tossed him a pair of insulating gloves without comment. It was a small moment, but one that struck him harder than expected. She had started anticipating what he needed, a spare tool here, a sarcastic remark there, and now gloves. He didn't say anything, just pulled them on and got back to work. Have you always fixed things? She asked suddenly. He shrugged. Grew up on a repair colony. My mom ran a scrapper bay. I spent most of my time elbow deep in broken stuff. Why join the military? Wanted off planet. Wanted to matter. Do you? He looked at her, eyebrow raised. Do I what? Matter. To anyone. He hesitated, not because he didn't have an answer, but because hers carried something deeper, like the words had escaped before she could leash them. I matter to the guy whose radio I fixed last week. I matter to the lady on deck 9 who can't figure out the toilet interface. And lately, I think I matter to the alien princess who keeps stealing my snacks. Olari blinked slowly, her ear shifted back just a little, the way they did when she was trying not to show how much something hit her. I didn't steal them. I requisitioned them under interstellar hospitality rights. The last granola bar had my name on it. Your name is boring. It was still mine. She tossed him a wrapped package from her cloak with a flourish. Fine. I brought you something better from the diplomat pantry. Behold. Theo unwrapped it slowly. This is a glowing cube. Yes. Flavored like Triumph. He sniffed it. It smells like radioactive lemons and sadness. Exactly. You're welcome. He took a bite, winced, and said nothing. See. Delicious. It was not delicious. It tasted like betrayal, but he chewed through it anyway. Thanks, he said around a mouthful of cosmic regret. Olari looked pleased. She leaned back against the wall, legs dangling off the bed, watching him with a mix of amusement and something more serious. I can't stay forever, she said, voice soft. Theo froze. I mean, I knew that. Eventually someone's going to notice a princess-sized hole in the galactic royal schedule. There are already rumors, she admitted. My cousin thinks I've gone rogue and joined a revolutionary sky cult. Have you? Briefly. But they had too many meetings. He laughed, but it didn't last long. Do you miss it? The life you ran from? I miss the parts that weren't about control. I miss being heard without being managed. I miss being me, not the version of me they've curated for political gain. You're pretty uncurated here. That's why I like it. Another silent stretch between them, but this one didn't feel awkward. It felt honest. Then came the station-wide chime, a deep, sinuous note that meant only one thing. Diplomatic ship inbound, Theo said. Looks like someone's come knocking. Olari sat up straight. Do you think they are here for me? They don't usually roll out the ambassadorial tones for discount satellite inspectors. She stood, pace quickened. I can't go back. Not yet. I'm not ready. He met her eyes. You don't have to. Not unless you want to. I don't know what I want. I just know I'm not ready to be her again. The loudspeaker crackled, all personnel prepare for visitation inspection. Dignitary clearance level, royal. She backed toward the crawl space again, but this time Theo stopped her. Not this time, he said. If they are coming for you, hiding won't help. We need a plan. Her eyes flickered with nervous light. You have a plan. He reached into his locker and pulled out a greasy maintenance vest, the kind worn by half the engineers on the ship. You're now Larry Jex, assistant coolant technician, recently transferred from the nebular filtration array. She stared at him. That's your plan. It's a good plan. No one questions coolant techs. We're like ghosts, but sweatier. I've never fixed a coolant system in my life. You faked being a closet panel once. That's at least intermediate level espionage. Olari blinked once, then laughed. Fine. Larry Jex it is. Theo handed her a fake ID badge. He had no idea how it had gotten into his drawer, but it was laminated and official enough looking to pass a casual scan. She clipped it on, then looked at him with sudden, overwhelming fondness. You're a strange creature, Theo Maddox. You're the one eating lemon despair cubes in my room. I suppose we deserve each other, then. And with that, the two of them stepped into the corridor, a princess in disguise and a soldier with a questionable snack drawer, ready to face whoever was foolish enough to come looking. The dignitary escort arrived with the kind of theatrical flair usually reserved for planetary inaugurations or luxury cruise commercials. 3 polished officers flanked a glowing invoice sphere that hovered like an overachieving jellyfish, pulsing with official blue light and humming faintly to itself in a tone that suggested it would rather be at a diplomatic wine tasting. Theo stood stiffly beside Ari, now Larry J., assistant coolant technician, who was attempting to look nondescript by fidgeting with a wrench she'd picked up somewhere along the walk. She held it upside down and slightly menacingly. The lead officer's boots clicked with each step as if he had installed sound effects for maximum bureaucratic impact. He stopped just in front of them, glanced at his datapad, and gave Theo a nod that was either respectful or allergic. Sergeant Maddox, he said. You've been assigned as local liaison for this visitation inspection. Theo fought the urge to salute with a sandwich. Yes, sir. The envoy sphere rotated slightly, scanning both of them. Olari tried to smile, then immediately stopped as if realizing her teeth might give her away. This is Technician Jex, Theo said smoothly. She's new. Quiet. Efficient. Doesn't speak much standard yet. Olari tilted her head in a way that was definitely supposed to look confused and accidentally came off as seductive. The officer narrowed his eyes. The envoy sphere beeped. Her file says she transferred from the filtration deck. Theo nodded. Nebular filtration array. She was top of her unit. Special commendation for containment management. Olari blinked twice, slowly. The envoy sphere bobbed closer. Statement requested. Technician Jex, confirm your prior assignment. Olari cleared her throat, adopted the tone of someone who had just swallowed a dictionary, and said, Bubble tubes many drip optimize. Theo coughed loudly to cover the silence that followed. Lost her translator in a coolant leak last week, he added. Poor thing's been rebooting language modules ever since. We've got her on visual diagnostics until it stabilizes. The officer stared at him, then at her, then at the wrench. The sphere let out a neutral-sounding beep and hovered backward. Very well, the officer said. Escort us to the reactor observation deck. The dignitary wishes to inspect the station's core integrity personally. Theo nodded, grateful his armpits weren't betraying him under pressure. Right this way. They walked in silence for a few paces, boots echoing down the corridor. Olari kept her gaze forward but leaned slightly closer to Theo as they turned a corner. Bubble tubes, she whispered. It was better than shrieking in banation. I panicked. That wrench is slippery. You were perfect. Exactly the kind of terrifyingly oddball tech this place is built on. She straightened up with a sniff. Then I'll be the best fake technician you've ever seen. Set the bar real low. That's the trick. The observation deck was empty save for a couple of engineers and a board-cleaning drone sweeping imaginary dust. The dignitary stepped forward from the shadows, tall, cloaked in silver, with a high collar that screamed, I have never once taken out my own trash. His eyes scanned the room with aristocratic disdain. Theo recognized him instantly. Lord Envoy Geryon of the Olar Accord, one of Ari's extended family. Theo swallowed. Ari stood ramrod straight. Her ears, Theo noticed, didn't move. Not a twitch. Geryon walked the length of the deck, occasionally pausing to inspect a valve or pretend to understand a console. This station smells like synthetic starch and anxiety. Must be the lunch special, Theo replied. Geryon turned slowly. His gaze slid past Theo and landed on Olari. She looked down, adjusted her grip on the wrench, and said, Tubes bubble optimize. Theo almost lost it. Geryon frowned. Where is the chief officer of this unit? Theo pointed toward the engineering wing. 2 decks down, calibrating the containment field. I see. Your coolant technician seems familiar. Theo stepped forward slightly. I've got 24 techs who all look vaguely like extras from a sci-fi drama. They blur together after a while. Geryon sniffed, unconvinced but uninterested in effort. Be aware, he said, addressing the room as if it were a particularly dim pupil, that a royal fugitive has absconded from her duties. Her presence aboard this station is a galactic breach of protocol. She is to be returned immediately if discovered. The cleaning drone chirped and ran over Theo's boot. Geryon gave it a look of suspicion. But what if you could choose? He considered. I'd build ships. Small ones. Not Warcraft, something fast, weird, and full of quirks. The kind of thing no one takes seriously until it outruns a cruiser. I'd live in one, she said quietly. Drifting between moons, naming every asteroid something absurd and dignified, like Baron Nibble Stuff or Sir Yonalet. Sounds peaceful. She looked at him. Sounds free. The telescope dome lit up with an incoming alert, non-critical but tagged with Geryon's clearance level. Theo checked it anyway. Inspection in Cargo Base A. Your friends on the move. I don't have friends with monocles embedded in their skulls. He definitely has a monocle embedded in his skull. I know. That's why I said it. They waited, watched, said nothing for a while. Then Theo stood. We need to move you again. He's getting closer. I'm not running anymore. Olari straightened. No. Not from him. Not from my name. He turned to face her fully. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe it's time to stop pretending I'm just another oddball technician with a suspicious accent. Maybe it's time someone reminded Jerian that I didn't vanish. I walked away. Theo frowned. That's not just bold. That's dangerous. She smiled, and it was the kind of smile that could persuade a black hole to open politely. I was raised to walk through danger like it owed me a compliment. The next plan was officially terrible. Olari, still technically L. Jex on paper, requested an audience with the envoy. Not in secret, but logged through 3 departments and confirmed by 2 mildly confused lieutenants. Jerian accepted immediately. He chose the station's formal chamber, a room rarely used and heavily decorated in alloys that hadn't been fashionable since the Galactic Fairness Accords. Theo stood guard outside, not because he had to, because he needed to. Inside, the walls pulsed with atmospheric gravity. Olari entered alone, dressed in a fusion of maintenance gear and her old diplomatic cloak. The cloak glittered faintly, woven from synth silk that responded to the wearer's heartbeat. Hers was steady. Jerian stood by the central node, hands clasped, his expression less contemptuous than curious now. Your Highness, he said, and the words curled through the air like smoke. I prefer Larry Jex these days, she replied, stepping into the light. Though Princess works too, if you're feeling sentimental. You've caused quite the disruption. There's talk of rebellion, of exile. I'm not rebelling, she said. I'm thinking out loud with wrench-based metaphors. This isn't a joke, Olari. It never was. That's the problem. He tilted his head. You believe hiding among greased humans gives you clarity. It gives me space. And laughter. And noodle cups. Jerian frowned. You think this station is sanctuary? She stepped forward. No, but it's honest. The people here work for what they believe in. They don't smile through politics. They sweat through problems. You belong to something greater. I belong to myself. I choose where I go, and right now, I'm choosing not to return. A long silence followed. Then Jerian sighed. I expected petulance, not poise. I've been taking notes. Your absence has destabilized alliances. My presence propped up lies. He studied her a moment longer. You'll be watched. I assumed I already was. He turned to leave. If you fall, no one will catch you. She smiled. Then I'll fall somewhere interesting. The doors hissed open. Theo straightened. Jerian passed without a word. Olari stepped out and grabbed Theo's arm. I think I just declared something. Not sure what yet. He grinned. Something heroic. Something loud. Now that sounds like you. They walked away together, not running, not hiding, just moving forward, side by side. 3 weeks after Alari's very public declaration of selfhood and Jerian's very frosty departure, the station had settled into something dangerously close to normal. Not peacetime normal, this was still a military post orbiting the edge of disputed space, but the kind of normal where people actually paused in the corridors to talk about sports updates and how long their plants had survived this cycle. Theo found himself counting those little pauses. They meant life was continuing. It meant they hadn't broken the world, just bent it a little. Ari had been formally reassigned to Engineering Unit 7, mostly because Grok submitted a memo that said, if I have to deal with one more new hire who can't tell a spanner from a spoon, I'll start replacing them with soup. The command staff took that as a yes. She still misused half the tools and installed 3 unnecessary temperature regulators just to see what would happen, but morale on the team had inexplicably improved. Theo didn't ask how she pulled it off. He just watched her laugh more easily and sleep without flinching and get excited over something called an ion muffler bracket. She was changing, not into someone else, but into someone real. And to his vague horror, she had started using his toothbrush. The message came mid-shift while he was cataloging hull scanner logs and sipping something warm and regrettable from the vending unit. Priority directive: Sergeant Theo Maddox report to Command Ops immediately. He arrived to find Commander Yoru's, 2 armored MPs, and a familiar silver-cloaked silhouette waiting by the display wall. Jerian didn't turn, just stared at a slowly rotating model of the station. "Commander," Theo said cautiously, saluting with half the enthusiasm. Yoru's nodded back. "You've been requested." Theo shifted his weight. "By Her Royal Highness All-Ari Jex of the Odoran Accord," Jerian said at last, in the tone of someone reciting their tax obligations. Theo blinked. "She's reinstated." "She is not under arrest," Jerian replied. "She is also no longer under observation." Yoru's folded her arms. "We've been contacted by the Accord's lower chamber. Seems someone sent a very articulate and impressively scathing statement to several ruling bodies outlining proposed amendments to royal succession." Theo tried not to smile. "That sounds like her." Jerian glanced at him. "She claims she was inspired by a human maintenance schedule. I find that deeply unsettling." Theo cleared his throat. "So what does this mean?" "She's chosen a new status. Not exile, not full abdication. An unprecedented third path." Jerian scowled faintly. "She has chosen to become an intercultural diplomatic citizen. A wanderer with political voice but no claim to rule." Yoru's raised an eyebrow. "Is that even legal?" "It is now. There was a subcommittee vote. It involves shouting." Theo scratched the back of his neck. "So she stays here?" Jerian shook his head. "She departs tomorrow. The Accord insists her journey be neutral. Station Command has requested she be accompanied. For optics." Commander Yoru's turned to Theo. "You're being offered the job. Escort liaison, possibly security detail." She smirked. "Or perhaps you're just the toothbrush she won't leave behind." Theo's ears went red. That's not in the official mission brief, is it?" "No, but it's in the gossip logs. And I approve." He looked at the map of stars behind them, 12 routes, 100 risks, all wildly out of regulation. He smiled. "I'll pack a spare brush." The next morning, the launch bay was suspiciously full of people pretending they weren't there to say goodbye. Grok handed over a data pad preloaded with an extensive index of every tool she'd misused, titled Technician Jex's Greatest Hits. The kitchen AI played a farewell message in binary Morse that translated to "Don't teach anyone else your recipes." The medbot saluted her. It had never done that before. No one knew how to make it stop. All-Ari wore her hybrid outfit again, half regal, half maintenance chic, with a belt full of tools and a tiara made out of repurposed navigation crystals. Theo walked beside her, holding a duffel and trying not to look emotional. "So where are we headed?" he asked. "Wherever they aren't looking," she said. "And maybe somewhere with beaches. I'm contractual allergic to vacation." "You're free of contracts now." He blinked. "Wait, what?" She tapped her wrist console. "I submitted your discharge paperwork. It was beautifully worded. I even forged your signature in 3 languages. You what? You're a civilian now. Congratulations. Here's a wrench." He took it, bewildered. "This is a spoon. It's symbolic." The ship was small, agile, and definitely not up to code. It had character, in the way that most slightly unstable geniuses do. They boarded without ceremony, engines rumbling with anticipation as they settled into their seats. Theo looked over. "So this is it. No crown, no war, just drifting. Olari smiled. Drifting is underrated. He reached for the controls. Let's make some trouble. She adjusted a lever labeled, absolutely not legal. Let's make new trouble. They launched, the stars catching their hull like sparks. Behind them, the station shrank into memory. Ahead, the galaxy unfolded in brilliant, chaotic potential. And somewhere in between wrenched jokes, mislabeled systems, and whispered starlight conversations, two people who didn't quite belong anywhere began to belong exactly where they were, together. You people keep strange company, Jerian said. We like to mix it up, Theo said. Keeps morale unpredictable. Jerian turned with a swirl of cape and headed for the exit. Continue your duties. The Accord is watching. Once the entourage had vanished down their hall and the door hissed shut, Theo exhaled like he'd been holding his breath through an asteroid field. Olari dropped the wrench. Did he see me? He saw you. He just didn't see you. She sagged onto the railing. That man once gifted me a mechanical falcon with my face on it. That explains your commitment issues. It screamed every time it detected sarcasm. He raised an eyebrow. Did it ever stop? No. Eventually it flew into the sun. They sat in silence, staring at the reactor core's pulsing heart as if it might offer wisdom. Theo bumped her shoulder lightly. Hey, you okay? I think I need another despair cube. I've got one shaped like a starfish that smells like mint and trauma. Perfect. As they headed back toward his room, she slipped her hand into his without looking. He didn't say anything, didn't need to. They spent most of the next cycle hiding in plain sight. That meant Olari learning to operate the coolant subprocessor badly while Theo fielded questions from suspicious engineers about why the new technician kept trying to organize the tool drawers alphabetically in 5 different languages. She labeled the spanners in ancient Corelli, muttered Grok, a grizzled tech who had surgically bonded himself to a data pad. No one spoke Corellian for centuries. It's coming back in style, Theo said. Very retro. She tried to feed the flux stabilizer. Maybe it was hungry. Maybe you're covering for her because she's got weird ears and mysterious royalty vibes. Theo offered his best deadpan. That is a specific accusation, Grok. The truth was, Olari had settled into the station's rhythms with unnerving ease. It turned out royal etiquette wasn't so different from maintenance schedules, both required impeccable timing, a resistance to panic, and the ability to smile politely while everything caught fire. She made friends with the kitchen AI by teaching it how to curse in celestial binary, charmed the grumpy medbot by pretending to faint dramatically every time it passed, and even got Commander Uruz to compliment her posture. It's diplomacy through chaos, she told Theo one evening, chewing on something neon and questionably edible. I sow confusion until I become the most familiar thing in the room. Sounds like my approach to dating. Exactly. You're lucky I find it endearing. Endearing or not, the pressure was building. Envoy Jerian hadn't left the station. His presence pulsed in the background like a warning light. Theo kept finding messages on his compad he didn't remember receiving, blurry photos of corridor shadows, sensor pings from non-existent locations, and once a single word, traitor. He didn't tell Ari that one. Instead, they escaped where they could. Hidden ducts, unused storage bays, the old telescope dome on the station's upper ring where the stars didn't feel so far away and the silence didn't hum with accusation. One night, after an impromptu meal of rehydrated noodles and nostalgia, Olari asked him, "Do you ever think about where you'll go after this? This conversation, this life?" He leaned back against the dome glass. Not much point. Military contracts are like interstellar fungus, hard to kill and always spreading.